Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm John Tucker. Here are the stories we're following today.
John will have much more on the markets and the latest reaction to Microsoft and Meta earnings. But we begin this morning with sports. The Los Angeles Dodgers have been crowned World Series champions thanks to a colossal meltdown by the New York Yankees. Let's get the latest with Bloomberg's John Stashower. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Nathan. The Yankees looked very much like they were going to be heading back to Los Angeles. Game 6 tomorrow. Fifth inning, they led 5-0. They had hit 3 home runs, and the Dodgers hadn't had a hit. But then came a series of Yankee blunders.
And it's line to center field, charging Judge. He dropped the ball and throws to second. Too late. So that'd be an error on Judge. That's the first time I've seen him drop a ball.
WFAN. Then came an error on Anthony Volpe, and then what should have been the third out without a run being scored, but Garrett Cole failed to cover first base. Dodgers would score 5 unearned runs to tie the game, took the lead in the 8th, won 7-6, and won the World Series 4-1. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports.
All right, John, thank you. And you'll be back in a few minutes for more details as well as post-game reaction from Yankee Stadium.
And Nathan, let's turn to the markets. We're seeing negative reaction to earnings from two tech heavyweights. NASDAQ futures down 1%. Let's start with Microsoft. Those shares down right now 3.7% of the pre-market. Profit and revenue did top analyst forecasts, but the software maker forecasts slower quarterly cloud revenue growth. Analysts say that reflects struggles to bring data centers online fast enough to keep up with demand for artificial intelligence services. Still, the Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella was optimistic on the company conference call.
All up, our AI business is on track to surpass an annual revenue run rate of $10 billion next quarter, which will make it the fastest business in our history to reach this milestone.
Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella says capital expenditures in the first quarter were at $14.9 billion. That's up 50% from a year earlier and exceeded analyst expectations.
Of course, John, we're also watching shares of Meta Platforms. They're down 4% in the pre-market. The Facebook owner is warning of worsening losses as CEO Mark Zuckerberg ramps up heavy investments in AI and other futuristic technologies. We get the story from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
It continues a years-long tug-of-war between the company's long-term bets and the core advertising business that provides the vast majority of Meta's revenue. Zuckerberg warned investors that Meta will continue to spend significantly on infrastructure and other projects like the metaverse and AI-powered glasses, efforts he believes are core to the company's future. That will be supported by the ads business, which is not generating the kind of momentum Wall Street expected. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, thanks, Charlie. And the high-tech earnings, they continue this afternoon. Apple and Amazon both report after the close of regular trading today. Let's get a preview now from Bloomberg's Tom Busby.
At Apple, the key for investors, sales of its latest smartphone, the AI-capable iPhone 16, as well as its latest AirPods and smartwatches. Investors will also want to hear the latest guidance on its AI initiatives called Apple Intelligence. At Amazon, the big focus will be on its cloud computing unit and whether all the money spent on AI technology is going to boost revenues at Amazon Web Services. Also of note, its advertising business and any update on efforts to speed up delivery times ahead of the busy holiday shopping season and how it's battling rivals like Walmart, Target, and Temu. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, Tom, thank you. Some other stocks on the move following earnings. Shares of Roku are down 14%. The maker of streaming TV set-top boxes says it's no longer going to report the number of households that use its products each quarter. Robinhood shares, they're down more than 10.5%. The brokerage reported revenue that missed analyst estimates. And eBay is down more than 9%. The e-commerce company projected holiday sales that fell short of analyst expectations.
And Nathan, in Asia, the Bank of Japan kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged. BOJ also maintaining its view that it's on track to achieve its inflation target. That does suggest a possible rate hike in the coming months. The yen strengthening this morning, up about 0.6%, just over 152.
Let's turn to the latest now on the presidential race, John. As the campaign heads into its final stretch, Donald Trump is seizing on a comment from President Biden where he seemed to call Trump supporters garbage.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
The former president rolled into Wisconsin aboard a white garbage truck with the words "Make America Great Again" in red on the side. Trump says he doesn't know the comedian who sparked the garbage flap by calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage at last weekend's Madison Square Garden rally. President Biden has tried to clarify his remarks, but Trump leaned into them at a rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin last night.
My response to Joe and Kamala is very simple. You can't lead America if you don't love Americans. That's true.
And former President Trump was joined at the Green Bay rally by a hometown legend, retired Packers quarterback Brett Favre.
Kamala Harris held her own star-studded rally in Madison, Wisconsin, featuring indie rock musicians from the bands Mumford and Sons and The National. The vice president urging voters to turn the page on Donald Trump.
Folks are exhausted and want it to stop the pointing fingers. It is time that we start locking arms together as a people who rise and fall together.
Vice President Harris also held events in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Raleigh, North Carolina. Earlier, she tried to distance herself from President Biden's comments.
First of all, he clarified his comments, but let me be clear, I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for.
Kamala Harris noting that the president said he meant to say Trump supporters' rhetoric is garbage. Today, both the vice president and former President Trump will be in the Sun Belt with dueling campaign stops in Arizona and Nevada, with just 5 days to go until the election.
As for President Biden, he is sending mediators to Israel to try to broker a truce in Lebanon. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with aides late Tuesday to discuss the latest proposal. Today, he'll talk about it with the White House's senior Middle East envoys Brett McGurk and Amos Hochstein. The new plan calls for a 60-day pause in fighting to ensure Hezbollah doesn't receive any more weapons from Iran and moves farther away from the northern Israeli border. Hezbollah hasn't signaled yet whether it's interested.
All right, thanks, Nathan. 5:07 on Wall Street, and it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, John. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says North Korean troops have been outfitted with Russian uniforms and equipment, and there is a good likelihood that those troops will be involved in the war in Ukraine. Austin says Ukraine can use U.S.-provided weapons.
Ukrainian soldiers have the right to defend themselves, and they will do that. With the weapons that we provided and others have provided, that's to be expected.
Secretary Austin met at the Pentagon with South Korea's defense minister. Washington says thousands of North Korean fighters could be on the front lines within weeks. North Korea has launched a new intercontinental ballistic missile in its first test in almost a year of a weapon designed to threaten the U.S. mainland and occurring days ahead of the U.S. election. North Korean media said leader Kim Jong-un ordered today's missile test to show North Korea's resolve to respond to its enemy's move. There is new information about the man police in the Portland, Oregon area are looking for after several fires in ballot drop boxes. Mike Benner with the Portland Police.
We can describe the suspect that we believe is connected to all three cases as a white male between the ages of 30 and 40 years old, balding or very short hair, medium to thin build, dark shirt, thin face.
Police spokesman Benner says they believe their suspect may intend to continue targeted attacks. It is now a top priority for the FBI. New potential path to freedom for the Menendez brothers. Days after announcing that he's asking the court to be resentenced, the brothers' Los Angeles DA George Gascon is requesting clemency from California's governor. But freedom is still not guaranteed for the brothers. Managing partner of the Cochran firm, lawyer Chana Lloyd, says Gascon's clemency request is a big deal for the brothers.
When we're talking about an application for clemency, we know that with having the DA's support is important, because if the DA actually believes that you should have your sentence commuted, that's going to go strongly with the governor when he considers it.
Lawyer Chana Lloyd spoke to ABC. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Thank you, Michael. And that brings us to 5:10 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update, brought to you by Tri-State Audi. And for that, we bring in John Staffsharer. John, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, John. World Series Game 5 in the Bronx had a great Yankee start. The Aaron Judge home run that everyone's been waiting for. He went back-to-back with Jazz Chisholm. Giancarlo Stanton, his 7th homer of the postseason. The Yanks led the Dodgers 5-0, and L.A. was hitless against Garrett Cole. Top of the 5th inning may go down as the most nightmarish in Yankee history, considering it took place in the World Series. Judge, who had earlier made a sensational catch against the wall, dropped the easiest of fly balls. Anthony Volpe had a throwing error, and Cole then had 2 strikeouts, one of Shohei Ohtani. When Mookie Betts had a ground ball, the first looked like the inning was over. Cole failed to cover. Dodgers would score 5 unearned runs to tie the game and 2 more in the 8th inning to go ahead. Bottom of the 9th came the celebration.
Swing and a miss, and the Dodgers are World Series champions. They storm out of the dugout third base side and mob Walker Buehler.
ESPN, first championship for LA since 2020. That was COVID. This is the first not in a shortened season since 1988. Afterwards, Aaron Boone obviously asked about that 5th inning, including the play at first base.
Mookie hits the squibber, so Riz couldn't really run through it. You know, he kind of had to stay there and make sure he secured the catch because of the spin on the ball. And I think just, Garrett, just all that he went through in that inning, kind of spent and kind of almost working his way out of it, just didn't react quick enough to get over.
Boone did win his first pennant as Yankee manager, but not the World Series. Knicks in Miami got 44 points from Karl Anthony Towns, beat the Heat 117-106. Nets won in Memphis 119-106. Celtics first loss, it came in overtime at Indiana. Devils won 6-0. Islanders lost 2-0, and the 2-6 Jets host the 6-2 Houston Texans tonight. John Staffsharer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan and John.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. We are seeing a disappointed investor reaction this morning to the 2 latest tech companies to report earnings. Microsoft is forecasting slower revenue growth in the cloud, while Meta Platforms plans to keep spending big on artificial intelligence. Now, the question for both companies is whether the payoff from AI is coming fast enough. For more, we're joined by Dan Ives, Senior Equity Research Analyst at Wedbush Securities. Dan, good morning. A lot of the focus, of course, on Microsoft is on the forecast for Azure cloud growth. Is too much data center demand too much of a good thing? Good morning.
Hey, look, I think this is one where the robust growth on cloud and AI is actually continuing. So I think any sort of negative knee-jerk reaction, I think, is the wrong move because it just shows the momentum's continuing. We're buyers in Microsoft here. It shows the AI revolution hitting the next stage of growth.
Does Microsoft, though, need to show more when it comes to the build-out?
Look, I think this is one where investors are always concerned that there's going to be one quarter that you don't see it. But it's actually the opposite. And Microsoft has such good visibility. You're looking at massive growth. I mean, Azure is something that it's 2 times bigger than anyone thought it was 2 years ago. So you start to see this all playing through. I think this is just the beginning of the next phase of the Microsoft growth story.
So where is Microsoft positioned at this point now after the positive earnings that we saw from Google parent Alphabet, particularly in Google Cloud? Is Google nipping at Microsoft's Azure heels right now?
Look, I think this is a big enough ocean for more than 3 boats in terms of Microsoft, Amazon, Google. Google is definitely starting to gain a lot of momentum, and I think that's clearly playing out. But that's not necessarily negative for Microsoft because the growth continues to be ultimately higher than the street expected. You'll have knee-jerk reactions in all these quarters, Meta, of course, Microsoft. But I think we look out 24 hours, a week from now, these stocks are up from here. I don't think they're down.
Let's get to Meta Platforms and this warning from Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO, that the spending is going to continue and continue in a big way when it comes not just to AI, but the metaverse still. How do you see Mark Zuckerberg's strategy when it comes to the future of Meta?
Look, it is the right strategy. They are doubling down on a transformational technology once in 40 years. And I think for Meta, we could say sort of split hairs and some could be worried about spending, but that's the right move because it's the next growth platform for Meta. And that's why, look, stock's been a rocket ship. You'll have some of these knee-jerk reactions, but this story is not done. It's actually just the next wave that will be AI-fueled.
And the next wave is coming after the close today when we hear from Apple and Amazon. Of course, there's going to be a lot of attention on Amazon Web Services now as well. What's the setup for the rest of big tech earnings in our final minute, Dan?
Yeah, I think the setup strong for Amazon. I think investors are not expecting too much, but yet I think actually AWS, that's another part of the growth story, just like we saw with Google and Microsoft. So I think we're bullish on Amazon, but this is a prove-it quarter for them. For Apple, look, it's all about showing iPhone 16. This is the beginning of that AI-driven super cycle. It's not happened overnight, but when Cook talks, everyone listens. It's all about China. I think it's going to be positive. And you end the week, you look back at tech earnings, you feel bullish in terms of AI, and I think where this broader market's going.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak, your morning podcast on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 92.9 in Boston, and nationwide at Sirius XM Channel 121.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto interfaces.
And don't forget to subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. It's the latest news whenever you want it in 5 minutes or less. Search Bloomberg News Now on your favorite podcast platform to stay informed all day long. I'm John Tucker.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.